What happens after that point will vary quite a bit. The average person who doesn't even have a spiritual life, an inner life, or even a creative, inventive life, who lives more in the senses and so forth, who is not very aware, lives mostly by the subconscious mind, will tend to fall asleep after death, after a moment of awakening that I previously described. And they'll tend to fall asleep like we do at night and then dream. They may have very pleasant dreams. We'll come back to the other place, hell, in just a moment. And so the average person without an inner life, who lives more in the body and in what we in yoga call the lower chakras, will tend to fall asleep during their period of rest in the astral world. Towards the end of that rest, and the length of that rest in terms of earth years will vary quite a bit. Some people can be reborn very quickly, and others less so. But those with heavy physical karma will tend to be reborn sooner. Some people will have earned or need a longer term rest and from maybe a very challenging, difficult, painful life. In any case, the time comes when, due to our physical karma, we need a new body and we have to reincarnate. And so what happens every night, towards the end of the night, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, etc., we start to stir. We've been into the dream state, we've been into the dreamless state, and then towards dawn we shift back into dreaming right before we wake up. And so there's a period of sort of restlessness, because remember, the soul, we're told, is always awake, is always present. And so the soul is always observing that. It's just that for those who have not rediscovered their soul, they're not connected to it. And so what the soul observes isn't necessarily what, quote, we experience. In any case, the soul sees that it's time to wake up and get on with life's lessons. And so there can be a little bit of uneasiness. Maybe some of those dreams will go back to the prior life. Some of those dreams will be portentous, meaning anticipating the life to come. And then, of course, we're reborn. I'm not going to go into that rebirth part right now. Now, I mentioned hell. That's a difficult subject. First off, the astral, heavenly, or hellish regions, are not permanent. Like everything else in creation, outside of the bliss of God, all things are moving and vibrating and changing. And there is no eternity, no reward or condemnation for eternity in those astral regions, because they are not our final destination. Hell is for, well, we know who goes to hell. I mean, on some level or not, or otherwise. And so I'm not going to describe that from what I've learned, but let's just say that it's not fun, all right? But it doesn't last forever. In any case, when Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions," one of the things that means, Paramhansa Yogananda said, is that in the astral regions, those mansions are many, many different levels. His guru, Swami Kriyananda, when he left his earthly body in 1936, went to a very, very high heavenly realm where people are just about to graduate even from those regions to yet higher regions. Again, I don't want to get into that in this broadcast. So there are many different levels. Those people who have had a spiritual life, an inner life, and even those people who, like Thomas Edison or, what's the guy who invented, the electricity guy, suddenly from Serbia. Anyway, people who are very, very creative, or Beethoven or Bach and people like that, they live much more in the higher centers, much more in the brain. And so those people who can, let's say when they're doing a creative project, can go days without food, let's say. Anyway, people like that are what I'm talking about, those who have silent prayer and meditation or are very creative, are people who can live in the more refined levels of consciousness that are aspects of the astral body. So when they die, they're more comfortable, not breathing and not having 5 physical senses. They're already attuned vibrationally with the subtler realm of the astral worlds. And so just speaking now of saintly people, they remain conscious on the astral plane until such time, if they have some physical karma yet to work out, until such time as it's time for them to be reborn. As I said, most people go to sleep, and some people are in varying degrees more wakeful than others. Just as at night some people can dream lucidly and be present with their dreams, so in the astral regions, some people who are more wakeful are more aware of the dreamlike quality of the astral worlds. Okay, I think that's about all I want to say on this subject, but in fact that's not true. The most important thing I want to say is this. All great spiritual traditions tell us that when a loved one dies, it's very, very, very valuable to pray for them, especially within the first days or period of time. Some people will say upwards a year, but whatever the period of time is, it's very valuable to pray. Why? Because deprived of their physical body with all of its memories in the brain and ordinary associations and abilities and language processing, etc., the soul of all but the most highly advanced spiritual people is bereft of their ordinary tools. And so we who still have those tools, if we can concentrate our minds, especially if we're a meditator, and especially if we're not just deep into grief, at least not in that moment, if we pray and send vibrations of comfort and love and joy, knowing that that soul still lives, we might, yes, also feel grief, but what I'm talking about is in periods when we're calm enough, when we can set aside, or our grief isn't overwhelming to us, at least at that moment, and we can pray for those people. They need help with clarity, encircling them with light, encircling them with calmness, with comfort, with faith. Very important. And that can go on for years, depending on your relationship with them. So praying for people is very important. It's also important with respect to our grief to understand that that person lives on in us, in our hearts, in our memories. That person still lives. It's very, I won't say very common, but it's not uncommon for a person to have a visitation in a dream, typically, of our loved one. Maybe right away, could be a year later. My father came to me in a dream a year or two after his passing, for example, when I was out in the woods and camping. It was very quiet. And so that's not uncommon. So remember that in respect to our grief, our tendency to be sad, know that that person lives on within ourselves, quite apart from their living on their own. And treasure then, focus with gratitude on your memories. Yeah, there's always regrets, all right. But try instead, or as often as you can, to focus on your sweet memories and of the great gratefulness, the gratitude you feel for their friendship, for their love, for their life, for things you've learned from them, and so forth. So know that they live on in both ways, okay? All right, so that brings us to a close. All right, God bless you.